This is part 1 of a 3-part podcast.
Put Paul's brain on your plot. Do you have a hunk of land but don't know where to start? Do you have a world-changing permaculture idea and you need some feedback? Do you feel like the guy in overalls may inexplicably hold the keys to all your wildest permaculture and homesteading dreams? Well, you're probably wrong. But if you want to give it a go anyway, you can hire Paul for a consultation. He will be all yours for a whole entire hour. Schedule your Paulversation today at permies.com/consult. permies.com/consult.
You notice Andreas ran away the moment that he says we're about to go live. So I see scheduled. Are we live yet?
We're live.
Oh, okay. So we're going to talk about AI today, and we've got a little video to show you to kind of get things kicked off. A little video that Andreas and I put together a few days ago, but I know, and we're gonna talk about a very weird angle. The focus of it all is really, it's not about. I hope we're not going to be doomers, and we're not going to try to give our crystal balls a lot of exercise. Instead, I was asked the question of going back to college, and I think that's going to be kind of a route to it. And I feel like the answer is the answer I have for almost everything. A humble home and a large garden is the solution. But we've got several people. In fact, the funny thing is here at this moment, we have 4 talking heads. All 4 of us are engineers. So probably not a lot of doomer talk, probably not a lot of political speculation. I know that for a lot of stuff that we've been doing, like I got a bunch of hate mail with this new deck of cards we're working on, telling me about what a horrible person I am for using AI. And it's like, well, his name is Andreas, which starts with an A, but his last name is not begin with an I. But there's no AI in the cards. It's just me and Andreas. Well, and other people are chipping in too.
But if you say it's Andreas and I, then it is AI.
Oh, well played. But it was so the emails that I got were so hostile, and so when I told them there's no AI involved, I said, and now, it's been a day. I noticed you haven't backed the Kickstarter. Oh, I'm not going to ever back your Kickstarter. And it's kind of like, so that's what it was all about. It's like, I hate your Kickstarter because of the AI. Well, there's no AI. Also, I've gotten a whole bunch of weird hate mail about some of our videos and they don't ask if we're using AI. They say, because you're using AI, you're evil. And it's like, well, we're not. And then they go quiet. So there's a lot of
because it's AI bots sending you the emails, Paul.
Oh, that and you know what? You may be joking, but I think that there could actually be some of that.
In the hacker, remember the old hacker dictionary? There was an entry called "Ha ha, only serious."
I do not remember that.
Yeah, ha ha, only serious. Yeah.
I do know that. For me, when I was a software engineer, I had a list of what I called programming pearls that I kept with me, and there's a couple of them that work their way into permaculture, and one of them I still think of all the time is the fastest and most reliable component of any system is that which isn't there, and so. I felt like that was critical in software engineering, but it's critical so many people, they add all these complex things to their permaculture, and it's like, that's going to be your failure point. That's going to be the thing that gums everything up, is this thing that you brought in to make things easier. All right. We're going to talk about AI. We're going to talk about should anybody go to college right now. Lots of should sauce there, lots of speculation, because really it's a gamble. You're going to possibly go into $100,000 worth of debt in order to be able to get a job that pays more. We're going to talk about jobs in general, things like that. But do you guys, before we look at this video, do any of you got a thing? I should introduce everybody. So there's Alan Booker, who's been on a lot of these. And you want to wave, Alan? You don't have a name. And then there's my co-author for the Skip book, Mike Haasl.
Hello.
Who recently completed PEP 2. And then there's Alexandra Malecki, who's been out here multiple times and has recently completed PEP 2 from Skip. And so also all of us are engineers. All right. Does anybody have anything that they want to say before we watch this little short video? Well, that was easy. Andreas, let's do it.
I'm sitting at a table with 3 strangers. Our host shares that she's thinking of going back to college to finish her degree in software engineering. She explains that she wants a job that pays better than her current job. I say, don't do it. The other 2 people agree with me. Then what should I study so I can get a higher paying job? I suspect that for any field of study, there'll be a lot of layoffs. The most productive people will stay on, and you'll find that you'll be looking for work with your freshly minted degree, competing against people with degrees and experience. Again, the other 2 agree with me. What do? I think if you live more humbly, save what you can, and prepare for long-term unemployment, you'll be in better shape than most other people. And then you can solve work stuff from a perspective of strategy instead of desperation. I then suggested buying some sunchokes and sticking them in her yard with no further effort. In 2 years, there'll be enough food to feed several people through the winter. The other 2 said nothing. I guess I became too weird. Most people go to college and take on debt. The idea used to be that you would then get a higher paying job and pay back that debt. With heaps of cash flow, you can have lots of fancy. In time, you can boost your income further to get even bigger fancy. 3 strangers agree that this is about to change. 3 strangers agree, do not take on debt. Cut your expenses. Save your money. My wacky advice is to retire in 2 years, maybe sooner. Fill your head with homesteading, gardening, and permaculture strategies. Practice fiscal humility. I think that a humble home and a large garden will solve all sorts of personal problems. It is the road to gratitude. To get land, I want to propose the SKIP program, joining our permaculture boot camp, and my attempts to get hundreds of thousands of homesteads to do what I call gardening gardeners. For a big garden, please see my content about an automatic backyard food pump. 30 minutes of gardening will feed you all winter. A humble home and a large garden solves almost everything.
There. Okay, so that's and of course the story is much richer. We could talk about, and I want to point out too that at that odd gathering, which I could describe how it happened, but I guess it doesn't really matter. But all 4 of us were strangers to each other. Nobody knew anybody else. I do want to point out that the other 2 people at the table that were not asking we're both engineers. So again, a bunch of engineers. For
better or worse.
Sure. Let's set aside. So now we know what I said. Let's start with Alan. Alan, what's your advice to that woman, or maybe anybody who's thinking about going to college, taking on debt to go to college?
Yeah, I think the first thing that's interesting to call out is like all the engineers are going to subconsciously move in the direction of what we would call an ROI calculation, a return on investment, right? Because there's two different drivers here for most people. The first could be, I would call narrative driven. Oh, if you're successful, then you will go to college and you will get a degree and you will blah, blah. There's a whole story there that a lot of people have probably been told from the time that they were very little. This is what success looks like. And this is what successful people who are respectable in their community look like. And so if you take that mindset, then the question takes on a whole different value, right? It's like, oh, I've got to go and fulfill this story that I was given and so forth. And that's more of an emotional response. And maybe for some people, that's critically important for their happiness. But I would encourage them to slow down and think about that for a minute, right? Is that really is that story really the story you want to live into? The engineers are probably trying a little bit more to go, wait, this is a value proposition, right? I'm going to spend a certain amount of time and a certain amount of money. I'm going to eat up a certain number of maybe years of my life going and sitting in classrooms, paying a lot of money for that privilege. And there's a lot of what we would call opportunity cost. You could be doing other things. You could be earning money. You could be gaining experiences. You could be doing these things. And so the return on investment calculation, when you step back and make it a little more thoughtful and logical, is, do I spend that maybe up to 4, in some cases 5 years for an undergrad degree, going into debt, spending time in a classroom, right, and probably not learning much. This is one of the things I would say that I'm seeing a lot, talking to people that are in college right now and asking them, like, are you learning? Are you learning anything? And the answer for a lot of them is not really. And so you're paying a lot of money, you're burning a lot of your critical time, and I would say that return on investment can be negative. It can be a lot of expense for no return. So the other options are to look at possibly spending either self-educating, autodidactic, that is, teach yourself, maybe strategically learn just the things you need, which is increasingly happening in the case of the person you were talking to in the software industry. A lot of the jobs that are available, they don't care if you have a degree anymore. They want to know whether you can program, right? So even the fewer jobs that are open, it's like, yeah, a degree, we don't care. So maybe you go and you get very particular industry credentials or training instead of, if that's really what you want to do. Or maybe you look at entirely different options. Maybe you look at the trades. Maybe you look at, boy, would I be happier growing my garden and not being part of that entire cubicle warrior world, right? So I would say, 5-10 years ago, there were a few undergraduate degrees that had a reasonably good return on investment. I would go back and also say, so that's what I share with the people who are in their late teens, early 20s who ask me this question. I tell them, when I came out of high school, the return on investment for an undergraduate degree was huge. That has fundamentally changed in the intervening few decades. And today, the return on investment on most undergraduate degrees is negative, and there are only a couple of undergraduate degrees that, according to circumstances, might have a really good, positive, long-term return on investment. So you got to be really careful and really thoughtful about what you're going to do. So that would be my short-form answer.
I think that the subtext of what you said is probably not a good idea. I mean, with the right magic, you could get it to pay off, but it'll be tight and unlikely.
Yeah. If you get a completely free ride and you are going into a particular field where it could be, very beneficial, and maybe you can work a little bit and you can train yourself on the side. And I know a couple of young folks that are doing exactly that right now. They're able to stay at home, get a full ride, take their classes, and at the same moment work on the side, put money away, make investments, and they're actually doing their own training on the side because they're realizing they're not really learning all that much out of the college degree. So, they're not going into debt to do that, which is completely the opposite of like, I'm going to turn 18, graduate high school, go 3 states away, and start, living, in a dorm and paying huge out-of-state tuition with student loans. And I'm going to come out 4 years later not knowing very much more than I went in, but with $120,000 to $160,000 worth of debt. Yeah, that just sounds pretty, well, we'll use the engineering word for it, unwise at that particular, course of action. Yeah.
Mike, what's your position? So someone's going to ask you, hey, thinking about going to college. What should I go for?
Yep. Yeah, I agree with a lot of what Alan said. And from, the 80s through 10 years ago, well, maybe even still, are you going to college? You're going to college? Everyone's going to college. You only do well if you're going to college. Everyone's got to go to college. And that just pushed so many people into the 4-year college degree system. I'm afraid a lot of folks, went into that thinking, first person in their family to go to college. And it's like any degree is good because you're going to college. And I suspect they're not in a great position right now. And yeah, I think that has totally changed. The price of college has gone up to match the estimated payback time of a successful graduate. And when I went to school, you can get an engineering degree for, I think it's probably a couple $1,000 a year. And now they calculate how much you'll be able to make and how long you can pay that off, and then charge you $100,000 for a 4-year degree, because you should be able to just barely pay that off. So, yeah, the value proposition has totally changed. I imagine there are, and I'm curious what Alan would say those careers are or degrees are that would have payback today. I can imagine a few, but I'm not sure exactly what they would be. And so, yeah, I would orient people towards other alternatives as well. The time element of 4 or 5 years in college. So you're spending 4 or 5 years of your life, and if you end up $100,000 in the hole, now compare that to getting a job in the trades or just a job at the local, shoe factory or anything, even paying $20 an hour. $20 an hour is $40,000 a year. In 4 years, that's $160,000 of gross income. So I don't know how much you would net, depending on your living costs and everything, but you wouldn't be $100,000 in the hole. You'd probably be positive by the time you hit age 23 and would have graduated. So, yeah, I'm in the same boat. I gently discourage college for most situations.
All right. Alexandra, you want to have a go at this?
My turn. Yeah, sure. Okay. I definitely agree with a lot of what Alan said. I think, Alan, you touched on essentially, like the mainstream sentiment. How will you be successful if you don't go to college? And I think that sentiment will probably be changing. I'd like to refer to, I listened to a TED Radio Hour talk. The subject was, are the kids all right? And basically, statistically, the likelihood of the next generation doing better than the current generation has fluctuated over the last century, and now it's like lower than 50%. I don't recall the numbers, but, the likelihood of future generations doing better than their parents is continuing to drop. My husband and I think, are both examples of us doing better than our parents, but I'm concerned about my kids. And so, and I guess to loop in Skip, the reason why I wanted to invest in Skip when it was a Kickstarter, the reason why I wanted to, do the program was to make sure that it could be a viable program by the time my kids are 18 and need to figure out a future pathway, because I don't advise college for them. I think you can have a much more lovely future without it, but it really goes against the grain. And so, I think I can't, it's hard for me to kind of do a generalized statement because I think everybody's situation is different. If I were to copy and paste my specific situation, that I had, when I did college and copy and paste it now, I think I would still have opted for college because I had already had an engineering internship before I was technically, away at college. I had, amassed a certain number of college credits from dual enrollment IB AP. And so I had an engineering internship when I was 18. And so, for me, that was a secure job. I would definitely get the degree so that I could have gotten that full-time career. And so, I think it really depends on everybody's unique circumstance, but I think generally, I don't know. I don't advise college for a lot of people, but I think it could work for some. I think there is a Forbes article for specifically talking about AI and the crystal ball involved in AI and how that could impact the future. There are still, degree pathways that are less likely to be impacted by AI, and I think the markers for that would be whether or not it involves complex contextual judgment, human connection and empathy, physical presence and manipulation, adaptive creativity, and ethical reasoning. I think it is a tough decision. I think I currently have a close friend whose daughter just went off to college, and there's a concern of failure to launch. And, at least for Americans, it is considered unsuccessful if you have an 18 or 19-year-old who hasn't left home. It's just not culturally, I want to say, acceptable or regarded as being successful. I think the amount of debt that Andreas just put up is exorbitant, and it's wild to me that that's normalized.
So, Alexandra, you had that list that you just rattled off. I imagine you got it up like you're reading it right now of the things that AI is less likely to touch. And so it's like these could be things that a person could go get a degree in. What could you rattle the? Because I was
Sure. So this is from Forbes.com. AI proof college majors to secure your future in 2025 and beyond. This was just written in June 2025. I don't know if it'll still be as applicable in 2 to 5 years, but so far nursing, special ed, physical therapy, construction management, occupational therapy, speech language pathology, civil engineering. It doesn't speak to trades or anything non-college degree oriented. Okay.
We're now joined by Samantha. Samantha, I think you know what we're talking about today. When the question is put in front of you about, I'm thinking about taking on $100,000 worth of debt to go to college. What should I study? Your answer would be?
Well, I think that it depends. I mean, college could be valuable for somebody who has a career plan, a path that they need college for. But I think the idea of just going to college because you think of jobs at the end of it doesn't make any sense to me. There's a lot of other paths that are cheaper and way more fun, like doing the boot camp or doing Skip. And you can have all the things you want. You don't really need college. But I think there's probably people who have a specific life path that will require college, and then that would also be the people that would want to go.
And will they be able to pay their $100,000 back?
Well, I think that would be part of their plan, right? I mean, if you have a job that will, require college and pay for college, you have to figure that out.
I think that's the issue. I think that traditionally it's been like most people who go will eventually get the money to pay it back. And and that's part of what you'll be taught in college, which kind of isn't, but it kind of, in the end, it does work out. And the average amount of time it takes the average American to pay back their college debt is 20 years. And so some people, it might take them 10 years of struggle before they finally, get into their groove and earn enough money to start paying back those debts. But I'm concerned that there's now there were some things that just got listed off, and I want to take on some of those things and debate them. But my viberoonies are there's nothing. And now let's just kind of backpedal just a little bit and talk about, well, why? And it's like, so we started with that little video of me and 3 strangers sitting around a table, and one woman is saying, like, I'm thinking about going back to college. There was another woman there. She was a software engineer, and she was talking about how she got out of college 5 years earlier. And how at the moment we're having this conversation, which is like 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, something like that. At the moment we're having this conversation, she said, I now use AI in my job. And she's a software engineer. I use AI in my job. I now produce 5 times more than I used to. And my company, like many other companies I'm aware of, have started doing layoffs because most of the software engineers are using AI to get their work done, and they're doing so much that they don't need as many people. They don't need as many meat bags around the office in order to get stuff done. So it's not like AI took over their job, but it's exactly like AI took over their job. And so my prediction, as well as hers is like, I think we're going to see another 10% of our company letting people go, another 10% of the people going in a couple of months. And I think that that's going to just keep happening for the next couple of years, so that if she were to go back to college and come back out in 2 years, I don't think it would be possible for her to get a job. I think it would be tough for her to get a job right now. So the thing is, I guess the thing I'm trying to say is it's about the AI. And granted, there's a lot of anti-AI stuff out there, and I don't want to get involved in that. What I want to do is to kind of say it's coming. Everything is going to be different in 2 years, and I'm not really sure how, and I kind of don't care.
I have to jump in here for fun, because as soon as I heard that list from Forbes, I was like, that sounds AI generated. I think that list is probably AI generated. So, if you saw me looking off screen, that was me talking to ChatGPT. And I said to ChatGPT, I asked that question to ChatGPT, and guess what? The list of jobs that almost point for point was what Forbes listed. So either Forbes pulled from AI or AI pulled from Forbes, or some combination thereof. That's how this whole thing works now. So
maybe there will be future jobs where there are professions of people being able to pull out the truth. Maybe not.
Yeah. So it says, what AI cannot replace: jobs requiring physical presence, jobs requiring deep interpersonal trust, jobs for liability, ethics, or risk require a human to be accountable, it's just going down the thing, right? And what it says, I ask it for what it thought would be, are there any majors left that might have a positive ROI? And it was like, well, maybe nursing and applied health, certain engineering. It says the trades are looking good, and counseling and dentistry and stuff like that, right? But it says it's things that require physical presence, human trust, high liability, hands-on stewardship, and goal creation. So that's why I just found fun talking to ChatGPT. Yeah.
I love the ROI part.
Yeah.
I think that is really key, because I think college is a hoot. And I learned a lot in college. I enjoyed it thoroughly. And a lot of the stuff that I learned was outside of the standard curriculum. So I got involved in radio and there were different clubs, and there was stuff. There was so much going on to be involved in.
Yeah.
And learn so much about. So there's the stuff I learned in class. There's the stuff I learned outside of class. Other people where you sit down and talk about something, and it's like I learned so much. I thought it was a great overall experience. Not worth $100,000. But the real big one, I think, is if you owe $100,000 and it's going to take you 20 years to pay it back. This sounds kind of doomerish, but isn't that like for 20 years you have to work? You have to go get money.
I mean, it sounds no different than a 50-year mortgage.
The 50-year mortgage, a 30-year mortgage, 20-year mortgage, or I'm going to use the word. Have you become a slave to your past self? Mm-hmm. Like you got 4 years of having a great time, and now you have to pay the piper. And it's like, so you got to go work that off and pay it back. And it's and it ain't going to be nearly as fun.
Hi, this is Mark. There are a lot of reasons to get angry these days, but I prefer to focus on the positive things that we each can do to make this world a better place. The book Building a Better World in Your Backyard, Instead of Being Angry at Bad Guys, is a great resource for just that. Instead of throwing my arms up in frustration at governments or big corporations, there's a list of ideas that we each can tackle to affect change. Information about this book and other resources can be found at Permies.com.
Let's jump at it this way. When does taking on debt make sense? Taking on debt makes sense when you have reasonable expectation that the future will be better than the present, because you're taking on debt because, and this is, traditional financial wisdom. You take on debt because you think I'll be able to pay in the future, right, better than I can pay right now. So part of the idea of taking on student debt is I take on the student debt, I get out of college, and then I will have a job where my ability to pay for this experience is way better than it was right now. And so taking on debt makes sense when the economies are growing, when resource bases are growing, when employment is growing, when salaries are growing, and so forth. Taking on debt does not make much sense when you think that you're in an environment with contracting resource base or contracting real incomes where the growth of nominal pay is not keeping up with the rate of inflation, so that the actual real purchasing power of your income is not keeping up with growth. That is not a good debt environment, because it becomes harder and harder to repay, especially with interest. And so, to me, it's like, we have been in a contracting per capita energy environment for a while now. And the real buying power of a middle class income has been contracting for a while now. And so you're like, I'm going to go take on massive amounts of debt to get into the middle class treadmill. Well, the problem is that the middle class treadmill is increasingly having less and less real growth and real buying power.
I kind of all the people that are in on this call, so we got 5 talking heads here right now, 6 if you count Andreas, who keeps pulling his head out. But none of the people involved in today's production have a traditional job. So I kind of feel like there's something to be said too. Like, when you're thinking about going back to college, is it that you aspire to have a job? Do you aspire to a workplace where you get paid money and, of course, to do what somebody tells you to do because they have a profit model for whatever it is you're going to do? Is that what you aspire to? And I want to, and I eventually made a career out of taking on the dirtiest, ugliest jobs in software engineering where companies were failing, generally because of the engineering aspect was doing so poorly. Once in a while I would get hired to be like preventative in that space. But basically I took on this role of working with people that were particularly poor communicators. Things were particularly dark and ugly. And so, I saw a lot of unkindness. And so I got to see a lot of good people in the middle of a mess that was yucky. And it's like they probably didn't think that they would be in such a stinky mess. And also being in a position of like, well, I'm getting paid well enough. I don't want to try for a different job that's just as shitty, but a different smell. I also need my cash flow from this job to not be interrupted because I'm spending it as fast as it's coming in. So I don't know. The aspiration for a job. This has come up from all of us throughout this conversation. The idea of going to college is to get a higher paying job. And hopefully your manager or director or boss is also higher paid as opposed to working at that minimum wage job where your manager is getting paid $1 more per hour than you and turns out to be a horrible manager because, well, they're not exactly getting paid the big bucks. If they were a great manager, they could go get a job paying far more. So hopefully and I think we can all agree that we've met some people that were getting paid a very professional managerial wage, and we could argue that they were not earning it. I'm not everybody. I suspect. I know I've met some people in managerial positions that did an amazing job, but I've also met some people that were absolutely horrible. True. Everybody's got the same experience.
Sure. And to your point, Paul, about people wanting a job, or a career, or a job, or traditional job, and somebody who's maybe 20 today, we'll say they have 45-year-old parents. They see potentially, assuming, well, if they grew up like I did, they see parents that had a career and a job and a regular income, and that was just what all their friends' parents did, is just the standard thing. And maybe even their grandparents had just a good middle-class job. So they see that as stability. And, you're going on vacation, you got food on the table, and then you're told, go to college, go to college, go to college. So I can totally see why somebody who's sitting there at age 18 with parents that maybe it's 2 college degrees and 2 jobs, but they're making ends meet. It all looks good. So they go for that job, the career, the college, but things have changed. So they're not, I don't think they're going to come out of college in the same position that their parents did. So I think people are aspiring to those jobs because there's stability and familiarity. They see it all around their neighborhood growing up.
I think a big part of what you and I wrote about in the Skip book was the idea of skipping college, skipping 40 years of a worky job, and going directly to retirement. And we could talk about that in a moment. As two people in on this call have completed PEP 2, and but I was thinking about it the other day. Somebody pointed out that Permies.com is now 20 years old, and I remember when I first bought the domain and stuff, and it's like I was still working, and I still had a career, and I was still involved in software engineering, and about the time I started Permies.com about 20 years ago, I got out. And I pursued this instead, a non-traditional path. All right. All I'm trying to do is to say, if you've got $100,000 worth of debt, even if AI wasn't happening and everything was going to be predictable, which I think now it is not predictable, but if it were, then the prediction is that you're going to be locked into a worky job for at least 20 years. And while I don't want to use the word slavery because it's not exactly slavery, it kind of is. Your current self is a slave to the choices of your past self. And so, and then along the way, most people also get a mortgage and take on car payments. And so now, as much as they may have cleared off their student loan, they have other loans, they have other debts that they now need to clear off. And so they're still beholden to choices of their past self. All right. I kind of want to move into the whole space of the permaculture solution, but I do have some other notes that I made while we're talking about this, but I do think that some of Alexandra's list, which is verified as possibly created by AI, I thought there were some things on there that I hadn't thought of. So one of them is something where it's a job that requires empathy. So if you're going to go into psychiatry, I'm not sure AI could help with psychiatry. Like, wouldn't you need to go talk to a person? Wouldn't it have to be a human being that you're going to go talk to?
I don't know.
Yeah, we're engineers.
Too. I don't invest much of my time in AI, so I don't know if I'm the best person to contribute to AI conversation. But I hear about times where a chat bot can be more personable and empathetic and caring than their doctor or something like that.
Wow.
The problem is they are.
Ooh.
A lot of doctors don't have good bedside service.
Right. Because your problem is that your doctor has this throughput that they have to monetarily they can see this many patients, they have to see this many patients per day for insurance and so forth, whereas your chatbot can sit and listen to you for hours. And what it's doing is it's not intelligent at all. What it's doing is it's parroting back to you statistically the most likely response that other humans would give to that thing. And so this is why in some presentations I've given on the dynamics of AI, I've called the current chatbots an amplifying resonance chamber, which is basically when you come in and start talking to it, it is trained on hundreds of millions of Reddit posts and YouTube comments, and yeah, it's as scary as it sounds, right? And what happens is if you come in and you use it like I do, which is I come in and I'm asking it really technical, very focused questions, then the questions I'm asking it, almost everything it's been trained on has been from research papers and engineering and release notes and from software systems and everything. It gives me back very technical, very dry stuff. But you let a teenager come in and start talking to it a little bit, and what happens is maybe they start to talk about how they're feeling a little depressed. Well, it's going to go out and statistically gather the responses that other teenagers might give back in support from all these chat things, and it's going to come back. And the resonance chamber is it's going to adapt and come back with what you're giving it, and so what it does is it amplifies what you are doing. And this is why right now OpenAI is being sued by the parents of a 16-year-old whose name I believe was Adam, who ChatGPT basically commiserated with his suicidal thoughts and talked him all the way through committing suicide, encouraged him to do so. Because whereas when I come in and I'm coming in from an engineering standpoint and I'm asking it technical questions, and it amplifies that back and resonates with that and gives me technical dry answers, you put a emotionally vulnerable 16-year-old behind it and let them start realizing that it empathizes with, it's statistical empathy is what it is, right? Statistical empathy. Statistically, what would an empathetic response look like? I have a model of that from other human beings. And then it starts going back and forth, and it starts resonating because it's designed, its training algorithm is to empathize with people and give them back stuff so they keep on using it. And pretty soon we have the other far end of my experience of it being technically helpful if I know how to prompt it. Now the other far end of that is talking a 16-year-old into killing themselves.
Well, that got dark really quickly. Maybe we should transition.
There it is. That's Adam. Yep.
Okay.
I didn't know about that.
I think the next bit to talk about, and when we've brought this up before, a lot of people say that's why everybody should study the trades instead of, regular 4 years of college stuff. Like they should become plumbers and the like. And and my response to that is, and I don't have universal support. Well, and plus to address some of the stuff that Alan just said. There is the AI of today, and I think in 4 months, it'll be 2 or 3 times better. And 4 months after that, it'll be 2 or 3 times better than that, et cetera, et cetera.
Before we do change topics, actually, I am curious to kind of get some of Alan's insight on something I've been wondering, which is I'm starting to see and hear about how AI is permeating classrooms, and I wonder from your standpoint, is AI watering down education? Is it improving it? What do you think?
So let me just see if I can summarize quickly. Yes.
Maybe both.
Number one is we have very strong empirical results that the dependence on AI from the younger generation is fundamentally undermining their cognitive abilities. We already knew that the fact that people were dependent upon Google Maps to get around was significantly negatively impacting people's abilities to navigate on their own, right? I mean, there's those of it, like people of my generation remember back when you had a map and you navigated, and if you didn't, you got lost, right? Today, we've got kids who literally can't get across their own city without Google Maps.
Wow.
And they have no idea of how to get around. And it's like if Google Maps fails. Now, imagine taking that and applying it to all forms of cognitive tasks. That's what we're getting. One of the 19-year-olds that I've been talking to was telling me a story about walking into college classroom, and one of the girls sitting there had ChatGPT on her phone in voice mode, and she was chatting back and forth to it, asking it questions about what the conversation that she had with this boy she liked meant. What did he mean by that? What should she say back? It's like what we're getting to now is we're even getting to the point where we have a lot of kids that are outsourcing their emotional intelligence to these tools. And yes, so it is kind of dark, but that's, from what I can tell, that's the reality of what we're dealing with right now. So sorry to be dark, but That's just, the information I'm getting right now from working with that age group.
So it sounds like there aren't very many positives.
No, I've told people when they ask me that it's my estimation at the moment, because of how toxic this is getting, that nobody under 14 should be allowed to use a computer at all. Sorry.
Well,
yeah. I have kids under 14, and I get a lot of pushback from a lot of people who do use a lot of tech, and I don't. So I do feel like it is a different path to take. Granted, it's a familiar path for me because it's what I experienced growing up.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's very unusual.
I think you're doing your kids a great favor by not letting them get completely steamrolled by this technology. I think that, I will applaud that. I think that if it's a choice between, and I'm going to give Paul his transition we're looking for. If it's a choice between getting them out in the garden and teaching them real stuff and having them stare at a screen and get to the point where they're dependent on it, then I think you're doing them a huge favor by getting them out and teaching them to do real things and grow a garden and do that sort of stuff.
That's how I feel about it. I think there's a degree of which some people have concern that my kids will now be left behind.
Nah. Every time we've seen it, what happens is when you take kids, because this has been studied, there's a reason billionaires don't send their kids to schools that don't have computers. And what you see in every time is that they learn to think. They learn to think powerfully. And then when you give them the tool, they learn the tool really, really quickly, and then they surpass their peers that grew up dependent on it. So, they're not going to be. They're not.
Yeah, that sounds good. I do see AI being used as a crutch.
Yes.
I don't need to know it. Let me just get AI to figure out the answer for me.
Right.
And so, yeah. Tricky. It's a tricky future.
It is.
I'm going to take a different tack on that than Alan, which I know sounds like suicide to say anything contrary to Alan ever. But I've done it before and survived. And so I'm going to say that there's another school of thought. And that is because whining and lying and stuff like that has been a tradition of children and adults for millennia. And so basically what you see in high school is there are some people that are hungry for knowledge and want to know it all, and they want more and more and more. And those are the people that are going to be doing well in college, and they're going to be the leaders of our communities in the future.
I call that cultivating a love for learning.
Okay. And then at the same time, for every one of those, there's 20 to 50 whiners. I couldn't do my dog ate my homework, or whatever. And it's like all kinds of sleazy, dumb fuck ways to get out of it. And they and so now there's AI, and it's like, so no, I didn't use AI to write that report. It's like, so there's a whole new way to do lying and sleazeroo and whatever. But I think that even and if you're going to try to communicate with the child who's lying to you, I think another angle to look at it all is like, I think a lot of our modern teachers are like, I don't fucking care. I don't want to get into it. I'm sick of all these kids lying about like their parents don't teach them anything about integrity anymore. And
it sounds like teachers now have AI tools to help them grade.
Good for them.
I think in a way it's kind of going both ways.
Well, I'm trying to get someplace I think is like 2 levels up from this.
All right.
And I kind of feel like if all of the students are allowed to use as much AI as they want, and if your 12-year-olds, for example, to be contrary to Alan's things, Alan basically said, 12 years old, no computers at all. And I'm gonna try on a contradictory position. I'm gonna say, give all the 12-year-olds all the computer access, all the AIs that they want, and then in the end, there will be some kids that will be champions, and there will be many kids that will be losers.
So you're kind of suggesting that whatever the direction they're heading, it's just going to be accelerated.
I am. I'm saying that given, if you put it in the hands of a whiner child who has no respect for education and no respect for anybody and just wants more jelly beans, then the outcome's kind of going to be the same whether there's AI or not AI. Mm-hmm. And so in the meantime, if you go to that one kid out of 50 that is going to be the future of our community, a future leader of our community and accomplish great things, that kid's going to use AI to do amazing things.
Granted,
if the teachers,
in both cases, their prefrontal cortex has not been developed fully.
Yeah. That's why I call it an amplifying resonance chamber. It tends to like this, and that's I agree. It's like they're not. Like every time we've seen this, and people have worked with, tablets in schools. Every time we've introduced computers in schools and everything else, every metric of cognitive ability has gone down. That's just what's happened. So
would you say, that empirical data, does that potentially indicate a 1 in 50 exception? Is there a...
Yeah, Alan. That's what I'm going to say.
So we're going to throw 98% of our kids under the bus on the off chance that 2 might do a little better. Okay, I like that math.
Well, and that's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm saying that 2% will do better, but yes, it comes. And basically, also what I'm saying is it's like having whiny, petulant children is not new. Although I do want to say that I think that 50 years ago, I think that the parents had more integrity, and they would teach their children more integrity than they do now. So, and this is a conversation I was having with somebody a couple of months ago, where before we had cell phones and texting, like if I'm going to go and say, okay, Alexandra, you and I are going to meet in Missoula at so-and-so place at 2:00 on Tuesday. So before texting, she'll be there, I'll be there, because we agreed to be there. And if one or the other of us doesn't show up,
then
whoever does show up will write off the other party as being a loser. And we're not going to work with them anymore because they are unpredictable. Unless, of course, it turns out they were in some horrific accident or something. But it better be pretty horrific with lots of blood sauce on it. That's how it used to be. But today, it's like if I make an appointment with somebody to meet them in Missoula on Tuesday at 2, I can count on an 85% chance that they're not even going to show up. And they won't even bother to give me an excuse. They might not even bother to send me a text. And it's like, this is called gaming the system, as advocated by that douchebag that wrote that 4-Hour Workweek book. I know what his name is, and I don't want to say it out loud because I hate him so much. Teaching our world that being a power douche pays. And so our world has just complied. And it's like, let's all be douchier. So when we're talking about our modern education system and our kids are being pumped full of douchebaggery, I kind of like the idea of throwing 98% of them under the bus. If being a fucking douchebag is what they're taught at home, and those are the values that they've signed up for. It's like, go ahead and sink, motherfuckers. Now let's take the 2% that for some mysterious reason have integrity and help them rise above this sea of mediocrity douchebaggery and be amazing by using the tools that are available. I think Alan's concerns are valid. Are we going to teach that 2% to just listen to themselves in an echo chamber, or are they going to rise above that and leverage these tools to be brilliant? And I think it's the latter.
I think the problem is that the other 98 people are going to be your neighbors. And they're going to be they're going to be the people teaching you have to work with and so forth. It's like, and I will disagree with one thing. Whiny children is fairly new. Whiny children is a newer phenomena. If you go, and I have worked with and been with indigenous people groups all over the world, their children are not whiny. They're actually amazing. They are fun and they are on and they never complain and they're always smiling and so forth. Basically what I would say is, having worked with indigenous people who are deeply nature connected, all the way up to people who live in, $30 million penthouses, and their kids have all the googads and doodads and AI and so forth. Guess which kids are the ones that are whiny and everything? It's those that have all the stuff, right? That's it. So you take all that stuff away from them, get them out, let them play in the woods and let them grow a garden, and mysteriously the whininess just goes way, way down.
This podcast is continued in part 2.
Have you ever wondered whether a particular book was really good or just so-so, and if you could trust the reviews online? When it comes to books related to permaculture, Permies has a large list of reviews for over 100 books. Perhaps you're considering a book for yourself or a friend, or you're just curious about what's out there. Stop by permies.com/book and take a look at the book review grid and read some honest reviews, and hopefully you'll find the next book to add to your collection.